humiliated him every day for his red MAGA hat. But when her car broke down on a deserted road, he was the only one to stop and help. What happened next changed her life forever. You won't believe how this story ends. Stay with us to see the powerful twist. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the bustling neighborhood park. Children laughed on playground swings. Dogs barked playfully as their owners tugged at leashes, and neighbors strolled lazily, enjoying the pleasant weather. Among the calm activity, a woman named Claire Dawson, a sharp-tongued and opinionated lady in her mid-40s, parked her car aggressively at the curb. Claire had always been quick to voice her judgments and opinions, often without pause for consideration. She prided herself on being morally correct and didn't shy away from confrontation. Her biggest pet peeve? Anyone wearing a red MAGA hat. To her, it was a symbol of everything she disliked about the world. Today was no different. As Claire stepped out of her car with a tote bag slung over her shoulder, she immediately noticed a man sitting quietly on a nearby bench. He was in his mid-40s, well-built but modest in appearance. His defining feature, one that instantly drew Claire's ire, was the bright red MAGA hat perched comfortably on his head. The words, "Make America Great Again," were clearly visible, gleaming under the sun. Her lip curled slightly in disdain as she muttered to herself and stormed off toward the walking trail. The man, Tom Reynolds, barely noticed her. He was the kind of person who preferred peace and quiet. Reserved yet kind, he often sat at this park after work to unwind. The hat he wore was personal to him, tied to his values and beliefs. But Tom never let it define his interactions with others. People judged him for it, and he had grown used to the sideways glances, the murmurs, and the occasional snide remarks. Claire, however, was different. She didn't believe in keeping her thoughts to herself. Over the past few months, she had noticed Tom on several occasions, at the grocery store, near the community center, and now at the park. Every time, she couldn't resist throwing a remark his way. "You really think that hat belongs in this town?" She once spat at him outside the cafe. Tom had simply smiled politely and walked away. Another time at the gas station, she muttered loud enough for him to hear, "I thought dinosaurs were extinct." "Guess not." Again, Tom ignored her, refusing to fuel her negativity. Today was no exception. As Claire walked past him in the park, she shot him a pointed glare. "Still wearing that hat? Some people just don't know how to read the room," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. Tom looked up, his calm eyes meeting hers. "Good evening, ma'am," he said simply, unfazed. Claire rolled her eyes and kept walking, mumbling under her breath about people like him. Hours later, the park had emptied as dusk set in. Claire, after finishing her walk, returned to her car. She dropped her bag in the passenger seat, slid into the driver's seat, and turned the key in the ignition. Nothing happened. Frowning, she tried again. The engine refused to start. Claire groaned, popping the hood and stepping out, though she had no idea what to look for. The soft rumble of thunder echoed in the distance, and the darkening sky hinted at an approaching storm. Pulling out her phone, she realized there was no signal. She looked up and down the road, hoping for someone to pass by, but the park was deserted. The discomfort in her chest grew as she realized how helpless she was. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a familiar figure. Tom Reynolds, the man she had mocked for weeks, was heading toward his old pickup truck, parked a short distance away. Claire froze, her pride screaming at her not to approach him. But as the first drops of rain began to fall, desperation won. She hurried toward him, her shoes clicking against the pavement. Her story. "Excuse me," she called out, trying to sound composed despite the growing embarrassment. Tom turned to face her, his expression mildly surprised. "My car won't start," Claire said, her voice faltering. "I think it's the battery or something. Do you think you can help?" Tom looked at her for a moment, his gaze steady. It would have been so easy for him to ignore her. After all, Claire had given him nothing but insults and judgment, yet Tom wasn't that kind of person. Without a word, he nodded and walked toward her car, setting his bag down. Claire stood awkwardly to the side as he opened the hood and inspected the engine. The rain picked up, falling steadily now. Claire wrapped her arms around herself, shivering as her clothes dampened. She watched Tom work, his movements calm and deliberate. For the first time, she noticed how unbothered he seemed by the weather, by her presence, by everything. The first time she noticed how unbothered he seemed by the weather, by her presence, by everything. "You didn't have to stop," she said quietly after a long silence. Tom glanced up briefly and replied, "It's what neighbors do," she said. The simplicity of his words caught her off guard. Neighbors. She had never thought of him as one. To her, he had always been just the man in the hat, a symbol of something she despised. Yet here he was, helping her without hesitation. After several more minutes, Tom closed the hood and wiped his hands on a rag he had pulled from his truck. "Your battery's dead," he said. "I'll give you a jump start." Claire mumbled an awkward thanks as he retrieved jumper cables. She stood silently, her mind racing. Why would he help her after the way she had treated him? What kind of man could forgive so easily? Once the car roared to life, Claire let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been here." Tom smiled faintly, closing the hood. "Glad I could help." Claire hesitated, her pride warring with her conscience. Finally she spoke, her voice soft. I've been terrible to you. All those times. I said awful things." Tom held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "It's okay," he said gently. "I don't hold on to things like that. Life's too short." Claire felt her throat tighten at his kindness. "Why would you help me after the way I treated you?" she asked. Tom shrugged, his smile warm and forgiving. The next morning, Claire found herself baking a batch of cookies. It was something she hadn't done in years. With a deep breath, she walked over to Tom's house and knocked on the door. When he opened it, she held out the tin awkwardly. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, "for helping me, and I'm sorry for how I treated you." Tom took the tin with a smile. "Thank you, Claire. That means a lot." She shifted on her feet, her voice softer this time. "I judged you for something so small. I never stopped to think about who you really were." Tom nodded, his expression kind. "We all make mistakes. It's what we do afterward that matters." Claire smiled faintly, the weight of her guilt lifting just a little. Over the following weeks, Claire noticed the change in herself. She waved to Tom whenever she saw him, and he always waved back. The tension that had once defined their encounters was gone, replaced by a quiet understanding. The experience had humbled her, taught her a lesson she wouldn't soon forget. Sometimes, the people we judge the harshest are the ones who show us the greatest kindness. Tom's words stayed with her. We all make mistakes. It's what we do afterward that matters. For Claire, those words mark the beginning of a change she hadn't known she needed. Have you ever judged someone too quickly? Or had your perspective changed by an unexpected act of kindness? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales that teach us the value of kindness, understanding, and second chances.